Rose here. I thought I might do a video on how it feels to be PIMO, physically in, but mentally out. You're stuck. From my personal experience, I remember when I was really questioning things and starting to realize that this wasn't the organization I thought it was. My kids had decided that they did not want to be a part of this organization any longer around 15 years ago. They weren't disrespectful, and they never put the organization down to any of my family. But the family knew that they were no longer going to meetings, and they started to distance themselves from my kids. Now, I understood as a witness why they were doing this. But as a daughter, a mom, a sister, it didn't make sense to me. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could a family who loved each other so much turn on my kids who hadn't even done anything wrong and they weren't being disrespectful? Then my family just stopped including my kids in any family gatherings. That went on for over a decade. Those were some of the hardest years of my life. I felt conflicted all the time because I just couldn't turn my back on my kids like I was supposed to do just so casually. My husband knew how I felt, so he would try and make me think about things. See, little did I know that he had already woken up, but I was completely happy in my ignorance, despite the emotional turmoil that I was always going through. I'd get mad at him and just tell him he was being negative against the organization. I didn't want to hear it. When, in reality, he was making sense, and I just didn't have an answer for him. Then the article on child sexual abuse came out in 2019. It was full of lies, and it was blaming parents. And that really upset me, as I personally had been affected by CSA as a child. I knew the truth about the elders and what the organization does. So I started researching, and that's when I found out about the Australian Royal Commission. I watched Jeffrey Jackson's testimony in horror. I couldn't believe the lies coming out of his mouth. He literally said, when asked under oath if they felt that they were the spokesman for God on earth, he said that would be presumptuous of him to say that. Well, isn't that what they tell us all the time? That they are God's channel, God's spokesman here on earth. He said he didn't completely understand the disfellowshipping policy as it was not in his purview. He's a governing body member. Everything is in his purview. Well, that made me actually feel that I could read Raymond Fran's book, Crisis of Conscience. And my world came crashing down. My dad knew Ray. He was a very kind man. I feel so bad now for thinking such horrible things about him for almost 40 years. I remember wanting to share everything I was learning with my family. I knew I couldn't just come out and say something. I'd be called apostate for it. And that did happen. I was at my mom and dad's, and I just wanted to burst because of what I was learning. So I asked my dad a question in the form of a return visit asking me a question I was having problems with. I said it was about 607 BCE. I said that my return visit said that 607 wasn't the correct historical date when Jerusalem fell. I mentioned to Dad 587, and I told him that my return visit said that Nebuchadnezzar wasn't ruling in 607. He didn't start his reign until 605 BCE. Well, Dad made some excuse that I can't even remember. And he told me that we know those dates as they are pivotal dates to Jehovah. I was shocked, but I just shut my mouth. And then fast forward a few months, I was at my parents' house watching the Gilead graduation that they had been invited to watch through a special link in 2021. Now, I was already upset, but I had to watch it, knowing everything that I did. And I was extra upset because of the time I had to wake up to watch it. So I wasn't in a very good mood. But you do not turn down a special invitation like that.
Can you tell us about that?
After watching it and then seeing a part literally being a morning show, complete with a fireplace, hosts, guests, and a very small audience, I was shocked. What was this supposed to be? What was I watching? This was completely different from what I had ever seen before. Anyhow, it put me in a mood enough to say something. So I asked my dad in front of my mom about the CSA. As an elder, I know he knew what I was doing. He said that there are those that say things against the organization that have been proven false, that by going through the branch, they were able to sift through the lies. You know, the standard line all elders are told, and they actually believe. I said, well, shouldn't it be the responsibility of the police? I mean, that's exactly what they do. They weed out the lies with their investigations. I brought up the article from 2019 regarding how they encourage witnesses to go to the police, but in reality, that's the opposite of what they do, and you know that. I was upset because of that article and with what I now know. Well, my mom started to cry and said that I was talking like an apostate now. I think they both remembered our 607 conversation. I know I needed to shut up. I didn't want to hurt them any more than I knew I already did. So I just said, "You're right. I'm sorry." Dad gave me a big hug, and he told me I needed to read my Proclaimer's book, see the history of the organization, and the attacks they have had to deal with over the years. I just said, "Okay, Dad, I will." I haven't said anything since. I was at my brother's for a shower, a room full of witnesses from different congregations. I have never felt so out of place in my life. All I could think about was what I knew and how I had to pretend I didn't know anything and act like everything was just great. And then one of my other brothers had a gathering for a couple who had recently left Bethel. They had been living with my brother and his wife for about close to 3 months. It was only supposed to be for about 2 weeks until they got on their feet. But they weren't really looking for jobs or a place to live, and I knew that. My sister-in-law was beside herself and didn't know what to do, but felt she couldn't say anything, as they were helping 2 of Jehovah's people. Well, we were all sitting around, and they were telling everyone how Jehovah had been providing for them these last few months. I couldn't stop myself. I said, "No, it hasn't been Jehovah who has been helping you. Right now, it's been my brother and his wife." Well, that at least shut them up. They moved out within a week or so. When I'm with my family, I feel completely isolated, even when there's a full room. Everything's different. I don't believe like them. I don't think like them. And I have to work very hard at still talking like them. I feel I have to watch the meeting so that I can keep up with the new terminology, because I never realized how much they change that. If you don't keep up with the terminology, it's obvious you aren't regular. Think about the term organization, which is now called the branch, just within the last few years. I have to keep up with announcements and any new talking points. I know that regular pioneers now only have to put in 50 hours, not 90. See, I wouldn't know that if I hadn't been paying attention. And this is not easy. It's completely mentally taxing. It's taxing when I see my family. How can an organization make you feel so uncomfortable around people you love? How can an organization make you feel that you have to keep up with everything, or else your friends and family will think that something's up with you? How can an organization affect you so much emotionally and mentally? How can it put you in bed completely depressed just because you learned something you weren't supposed to? Have you gone through any of that? There's so much more that I've gone through. It would make too long of a video. But I think it's important to share our experiences. It's important that everyone who are going through the same thing or very similar experiences know that they aren't alone. That there are thousands out there going through the exact same thing at the same time. Would you mind sharing your experience? How it has been for you when you started to wake up? I would love to hear what you have to say, and I think others would as well. If you wouldn't mind sharing your experience on this channel, I promise to keep your identity completely anonymous, just like I've kept mine. I think others need to know that this is happening and what thousands of people are going through. The organization loves to talk about how much they are persecuted. Well, let's show everyone how they persecute those within their own organization on a daily basis. Now, if you feel like you are comfortable in sharing something like that in a video, and trust that I will completely keep your anonymity, please email me so we can chat at jwresearcherrose@gmail.com. And don't forget the 2 R's. And if you do, thank you so much in advance for your bravery and courage in coming forward. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like algorithms. It actually helps it go out to more people. And if you really liked it, please subscribe so that you get notified of future videos. And as always, take care, and thank you for watching.